realizing I'm going to go home and go to graduate school because these guys are really good. But I got to get up there, and it was really wonderful. Came home. I literally tried to throw my bike in a closet and tried to quit cycling twice in my life.
Cycling is addicting, Richard.
It is.
Cycling is addicting.
I tried.
You tried. And what happened? What happened when you tried to throw that
You just start
bike?
dusting it off. Then you're like, well, I'm just going to ride a little bit. Next thing I know, I'm racing regionally in New England. And at the time I got my master's in journalism, I was working as a newspaper reporter during the time of desktop publishing. I have a master of bad timing. So I launched a regional cycling publication in New England called The Ride Magazine the same year that the World Wide Web was launched. So that shows you how that magazine did.
Okay.
Great timing. And but it was really great. For 14 years, it sustained me. My wife and I did it. We had some great staff members, many of whom live in the Cambridge, Somerville area to this day.
And it was strictly a cycling magazine?
It was a cycling, but we went out on a limb, and I was as equally dedicated to covering advocacy as I was to covering racing, and equally covering touring and the business of cycling.
Okay.
And so we were critically acclaimed, let's just say that. Did it for 14 years, and it just was never enough to sustain me and my 3 children and my wife. So a funny thing happened, though, is that on weekends I would go to races, and I raced well into the 90s, but then it was just getting to be too much. I wanted to make the magazine work, so they'd bring me up on stage and help me sort of talk about what was going on in the race because I knew all the riders. Turns out I became a race announcer. Another accidental career, and next thing I know, I'm standing with a microphone in France, doing television commentary, doing live. I'm announcing Philadelphia, announcing San Francisco. This has led to me being the announcer at World Championships for road and cyclocross. I just came back from the Czech Republic, where I'm the English announcer. It's all an accident. That's all I can tell you.
Well, what a wonderful accident.
What a
wonderful accident,
So,
something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about the Best Buddies.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do for them?
I started as their marketing director, and what a wonderful charity, first off, and what a wonderful experience working with people with intellectual disabilities. I'll be honest with you, I went into a rather cynical concept of working with people that may have Down syndrome, may have any number of intellectual disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, A, I end up falling in love with the charity. B, I end up having this great rapport and friendship with Anthony Kennedy Shriver, the founder of it, who is the son of Eunice Shriver, and the nephew of JFK, and really a wonderful guy. Anybody that's been around the Kennedy family knows they like every family, they have some dysfunctional wackiness, but really they're devoted to this cause. And I got to be his personal sort of trainer. He got into cycling, and it was fantastic to watch him get into cycling. Now he's really becoming a bit of a voice for cycling advocacy in Miami, where he lives.
And what exactly did you do for Best Buddies?
Well, I started full-time as their marketing director, just raising their numbers, getting sponsorship, bringing in companies like John Hancock, working with companies and sponsors, and helping to raise teams. And then after a while, I got an offer to be the director of the Bicycle Leadership Conference,
mm-hmm.
which is really great. So I did that for a few years, but I scaled back on Best Buddies. I went to part-time. So they named me director of cycling experience. So effectively what I did was I took all of these CEOs, senior vice presidents, who were surrounded by assorted butt kissers and things like that, and I basically told these very successful executives that they pedaled like cows and that they didn't know anything about how to ride a bike.
And how did that go over?
They loved it.
Okay.
These guys loved it.
So did they actually participate in the rides? These executives and CEOs, did they know how to ride bikes?
Well, no, they were horrible at first, but then they got better. So I got in with companies, Eaton Vance, John Hancock, Pilot Freight, we can go on and on,
mm-hmm.
Merrill Lynch, Deloitte, all these powerful companies. I know that you've probably said this, but cycling is the new golf. Well, I got to rub elbows with all these CEOs, and I think we're at a great time as a result of that. So I developed a Rolodex like you wouldn't believe. So that's the Rolodex I'm bringing to MassBike.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now let's talk about Providence Cyclocross Fest.
Yeah. A monster. Yeah.
Tell me what you do for them.
Well, I helped found it. We, as a younger man in 2005, as we look out on the snow, we won the bid to host the National Cyclocross Championships. I'm passionate about cyclocross.
When you say we, is that Providence?
That's Providence. It's really me and some friends and fellow promoters. And the only problem is we didn't have a venue. Mm-hmm. So we scoured all over New England looking for a certain criteria. We wanted a venue that was close to a downtown, close to interstates, hotels, airports, and we found Roger Williams Park. We put it on the 05 National Championships. Now, on Thursday of that 2005 National Championships, racing starts on Friday. This crease in my forehead did not exist. On Friday...
What? How did that crease happen, Richard?
On Friday, we got hit with what's called a bombogenesis, which we've heard of it now in meteorological phenomena. We put on a National Cyclocross Championships that started with there was a little bit of light snow falling, then it turned to rain, then it turned to sleet, then it turned back to snow, and then we got hit with 80-mile-an-hour winds. I had executives from Liberty Mutual crying inside these tents. We had to evacuate.
Oh my
we got through most of the racing, but if you are an event promoter and you have one medical transport, you're kind of a rule. Somebody went to the hospital. If you have two, you're like, oh man, I'm really worried. Should I go to the hospital? You have three, you're up all night. In one day, we had 87 medical transports. It was the most overwhelming event I've ever seen.
Now you talk about rain, snow, sleet. What month was this?
This is December.
Mid-December, okay.
And we went through all the days racing, all but one category race that day. But it was really uplifting. The next day, we managed to start racing on time. Everybody from New England came together, dug the place out. We built the venue. We had no venue when we left. But anyhow, from that, in 2009, we came back and started the Providence Cyclocross Festival. We think we have the greatest venue. I'd say we're the greatest cyclocross venue in the world. And the city of Providence has been pretty good to work with. They've been great. So now we're considered the best race in America. So I'll still be the event director. It's a passion that I have. We have a Grand Fondo that starts out of there. We have the Builders Ball.
And what's for viewers? What's the Grand Fondo?
Grand Fondo is Italian for big ride, and it basically is this big road ride. We go into 3 states. We ride from Rhode Island all the way to Connecticut, up to Massachusetts, back into Rhode Island. And
all in one day?
That's on Sunday. So you can do that just a road ride. You come back and you're getting food, a beer, and we're about to start a UCI cross race.
And so when is the festival this year?
October, first weekend of October.
First weekend in October.
Yeah.
So if some of our viewers want to sign up, what website should they go to?
Providence Cyclocross Festival, or you can just search out, it's now got a title sponsor, KMC Cross Fest. And that'll get you there. KMC Cyclocross Festival. Anywhere you look, it shows up as the biggest. It's actually now the biggest cycling event in New England. It's bigger than the Pan Mass Challenge. When we're at our peak audience, we have 10,000 people in that place.
So, wow, I was going to say, before we go to break, how many people join?
We have about 2,500 competitors. About 500 to 600 will do the Grand Fondo. But then the crowd that shows up is incredible.
That's fantastic.
And the Builders Ball on Friday night, Melanie, is to die for. It's a handmade art show for builders, for frame builders. But that place is going off. It's got about 1,000 people. You can't even fit in there. It's just amazing. The magic of Providence is pretty exquisite. And when we come back, I'll tell you about how we're going to take some of that event promotion and really apply it to MassBike.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll be back shortly after this break.
cyclist.
Welcome back, everyone. Again, our guest tonight is Richard Fries, the Executive Director of MassBike as of last month. And Richard, that was a fantastic video that we just watched of Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Just a fantastic video. Wouldn't it be great if Boston were like that?
Well, the reason that I showed you that video is I've been to Copenhagen, and it was interesting because I was there during the UCI Road World Championships when they hosted it there, where they had 250,000 spectators. But at the same time, I got to ride around every night on a hotel bike. And the thing about Copenhagen that people, advocates tend to believe it's all about engineering and it's all about building the infrastructure. And it is true. The infrastructure is amazing. Mm-hmm. And we are, I think we're going to do some great things in Boston here with a lot of help from a lot of different ropes are going to pull that boat over the dock. But a lot of Copenhagen is based on PR, marketing, advertising, communication strategy that they really started way back in the early 70s. It's in the art, it is in a lot of dialogue, it is in murals, it is in school children, and it didn't just happen. But I think that if we think we're going to engineer our way into utopia, it's not just that, it's marketing and communications, which is really where I'm going to try and do a lot more work for MassBike.
Sure, it sounds like it's marketing communications over a long period of time and ingrained in almost every facet of people's lives.
We got a lot of work to do.
Wonderful. So let's talk about MassBike. So you took over last month for MassBike. And if you all watched the show last week, you'll know that I interviewed David Watson, who was at the helm of MassBike for the last 8.5 years before you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about MassBike. What's the membership now, and how do you want to see it grow in the future?
First off, I've been under pardon the car analogy, but I've been under the hood of MassBike for some time and looking at everything. And effectively, if I was to look at it as an event, there's a phrase called good bones. It's got really good bones. That's David Watson did that. What David did in positioning us with Department of Transportation, Department of Public Health, merging those two, we're front line. We're one of the front, range states to do this stuff. We're right in there with Oregon, Wisconsin. Then you look at what's going on, what David did for us relative to sort of building the infrastructure is just so fantastic. I'm actually overwhelmed. I'm in the office all the time saying, how did he do this? But at the same time, and I think David would concur that we really need to do a lot more branding, a lot more. We need to get a louder megaphone, and we really need to grow the membership. I walked in the board when they were interviewing me, and it was the last minute. I threw my hat in the ring, and everything that they asked for in the requirements for the job,
in the job description.
So they wanted degrees in urban planning, they wanted engineering, they wanted that. I said, got none of that.
So you had none of the job requirements that they were asking for.
The only thing I knew is that all the other candidates, their interviews were lasting about 40 minutes, and my interviews were lasting like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And it really, the one thing that I could tell you was that I looked at the board in the eyes and I said, I have way more friends on Facebook than you have members. And their chins all dropped. And I was like, but we can fix that.
Wow.
So it's membership.
Okay, so that's one of your goals is to grow the membership.
Yeah. Membership, media, money. Those are my 3 M's, if you will. We've got to get a lot more media.
When you say media, explain that.
We need to be in the media, and that means social networking. That means Facebook, Twitter. That means being a much more vibrant voice. Having a brand. We really don't have a brand as to what we are. I ride in, and I'm in Porter Square. I ride almost every day through the city, and I'm in Porter Square with a guy that I used to race with in the 80s. And I tell him, hey, I'm a finalist for executive director at MassBike, and he's sitting there. Here's a guy that's been riding for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Looks at me and goes, yeah, what is MassBike?
Wow.
Now, if we don't have him.
Wow. And if he's been riding for 30 years.
We got a lot of work to do. And that's not any, that's not any condemnation on my predecessors.
I'm sure.
On anybody. It's like, that's what I do. And is to take these bones and build a bigger, broader coalition. So, and the other thing is we really need money and sponsorship.
Sponsorship.
We're going to get some sponsors.
How do you plan to increase your money or increase your funding?
One of the things is that if you really look at everything that's coming out right now on urban migration, kids don't want to belong. Coming out of college, they are not looking to live in the suburbs and belong to their father's country club. They want to be in the city. They want really good coffee. They want really good beer. And they want to ride bikes. And this shows up in all the demographic profiles. In 1990, more than 50% of 18-year-olds had driver's licenses, according to the Brookings Institute. That number is down to 29%. If I had any hope of getting a date in high school, I needed a car. Okay? You don't need a car anymore. You can text, you can Facebook, you can tweet. But now suddenly it is this whole concept. Kids are viewing cars as a hassle. I got to park it, insure it. And we have this great opportunity.
So it almost sounds like there's a mental change or a change in what people want. They want different things now. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, I think a lot of it is just what we used to view a car as is, car ads are great because they always show it's always on the highway and there's never a traffic jam. Now it's a hassle. I got to park it. I'm stuck in traffic. The thing's expensive. People are moving back into cities, and companies are moving back into cities. Look at all the companies that are coming away from 128, moving back into Kendall Square, the Seaport. Mm-hmm. And all of that young talent is craving, what's going on in cities. Look at the incubators and accelerators that are downtown. So the big race is on. If you remember in the 90s, everybody, we're moving to Charlotte. We're moving to Atlanta. Well, guess what? Nobody's moving their companies to those places anymore. Right. They want to be in Boston, San Francisco, Portland. Yeah, that's where the talent is.
So let me ask you. So
that's why we get sponsorship. Okay, that's why corporations want to sponsor bike stuff.
Okay, because we're right in the city.
The whole state is. All of New England is village centric. We were built for pedestrians. We were built with compact designs. We didn't scrap our rail system when everybody else was turning their rail system upside down. We have great transit. I think we have a huge advantage over Boulder, Denver, Portland. I think we have way better advantages. We have better bones to build a better bike infrastructure.
So you talk about these companies, they're moving back into these cities, and these young kids today, they want to be on bikes. Mm-hmm. There are many drivers out there that don't want us on bikes. I'm a cyclist, and they're honking. They don't want to share the road. How do we change that mindset, or what is MassBike going to do to try to change that mindset?
Right. Well, we can only be the change we want to be. Does that make sense? So it's like we really need to have the alphas of the cycling movement, and I've seen this in my own cycling. A lot of people feel like you're not supposed to wear the kit and have the good bike, and you should be on some beater. And that's fine if that's what you ride. But when I come to the light, people look and go, looks like this guy knows what he's doing. You become the alpha. So we really need to enlist the alphas, whether it is, the best gals, the best guys, the best people that look like they know what they're doing and how they behave. It's like the 12th monkey. When the 12th monkey washes his food a certain way, mm-hmm. All the monkeys do. Okay. Go to Inman Square. nobody's running lights. It's cool. You know, we're actually chatting. You know, you're starting to see certain corridors where the behavior is changing, and we can. That's a behavior I can try to change. I've been in this back and forth on Boston.com. There's a piece running right now, and down in the comments section. And I always say don't get into those, and I'm into those. But no, I'm into one. But it's like people are like you all, they all.
Right.
Them.
How do we change that mentality?
Well, you really have to look at. You would never, if you were to take out the word bikes and put in the word Jews or blacks, or you would never do that anymore. You know what I mean? You would never think of doing that. But now, bikes, it seems like we're okay to be them. And so we need to be firm. We need to be courteous. We need to be, it's the same thing as any minority. You have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So we need to be twice as nice. And, you know, I have a blog that's probably going to go up in the next day or two. And, you know, it's just, it really sets us back when you don't behave in your bike. It really sets us all back, you know? So let's be the good guys. Let's try to be the good guys, you know? Watch those crosswalks. Be extra nice. You know, I have a blog on the magic word. And for years as a youngster, and every cyclist is a work in progress, even the courier who's running through everything, causing all the problems. That person's one crash away from changing their behavior. But the word that is, think about your own words as you ride. Typically, we have a bullet in the chamber of our mouth. And what is that? And for me, it was a bad word, or a lot of bad words. And I came to realize that's not effective. It doesn't work at all. So the magic word I've learned is the one word, and I have it loaded in the chamber at all times. And that word is careful. Careful. Just say careful.
Being careful.
And you know what? The pedestrians are like, well, I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm not saying you're smart. I'm saying just be careful. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about me. Careful. And what I've learned at every crosswalk in red light, it thaws relations beautifully. At one point, one guy was like, yeah, you be careful. Wait a minute. It was like it was fun.
So on that note of being careful, before we go to break, one last quick question for you. How do we get just everyday people involved with MassBike or cycling to get more people on the road in order to be careful?
Well, we need to make it normal. We can't
What's
be
that
that.
mean?
Well, what we need to do is I think we really need to humanize the relationships. That it's always funny to me that the same person that would hold it at the coffee shop for you is the same person that would like to try to run you off the road. There's this anger to transportation in America, and it's really unique to America. A few other, I haven't ridden a few crowded places. But I think that we need to make it, these are people on bikes. These are fathers, these are mothers, these are grandparents, these are teachers, these are nurses, these are CEOs, these are shipping clerks.
Okay.
We need to humanize it.
Bottom line is we need to humanize it. We need to make it normal. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be back shortly.
It has good paths, and that as compared to other streets in Boston, but it still is. You never know. You always have to worry about the drivers because a lot of them don't think about the bikers. So I got doored last week, and it's never enjoyable. So people just don't even think twice about there being a biker in this lane. Like they have a parking spot here, and then they don't even realize that there's the lane next to them that's designated for bikers. So.
You know, you have right now the strong and fearless on the road. You have about 1.9% of people biking in Boston. We got a little bit of the enthused and confident folks that we can convince with a little cajoling, a little training to get on the road. But we're missing all this, the interested but concerned crowd. This comes out of Portland, and actually they checked it. I believe they did surveys of the population up there. And this is really how many people are out there that would bike if it was safe enough to do so. And I've been telling this to everybody and trying to, convince the city that we need cycle tracks here. And actually, I'm just kind of explaining the door zone to the mayor here. And he was kind enough to come out for a ride with us. But really, it's going to be up to you guys to get your voice heard at that level. And at this level, we have a lot of people from the city here today to listen to your comments.
Hi, I'm Jim Gillooly. I'm the interim commissioner of the Boston Transportation Department. I'm here tonight listening to a lot of folks who are involved in bicycling and getting an opportunity to hear what's on their minds about a design that's underway for the Commonwealth Avenue stretch between the BU Bridge and Packett's Corner. What we have in mind by coming out here tonight is we're doing a reevaluation of some earlier design work. And we're trying to do as much as we can for bicycles, even while we have to simultaneously keep in mind the balance between all of the modes, because as you may have heard tonight, several people talked about the pedestrian experience. Right. Other people talked about access to the sidewalks, to the T.
Livable Streets organization, we're about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and a lot's changed over the last 10 years. And I'm excited to spend a couple minutes just sort of saying what's going on. So this stretch of ComAv here, when we first found it about 10 years ago, was under reconstruction, and there weren't going to be bike lanes there. In fact, there weren't bike lanes anywhere in the city of Boston. I think that's not true. There was 3/8 of 1 mile of bike lanes. So we said, this doesn't look good. So we put together that coalition and said, we think things could be different. And we ended up getting bike lanes on that street, which I think BU is very pleased with now, and so are the students. But what does the future look like? That's what I want to talk about now. First, a couple trends. What's happening? Well, it turns out that car volumes on this street are dropping. Pedestrian activity, people walking, is increasing by 80%. Bicycling has more than doubled since the bike lane was put on a section of ComAv. And since 1964, we keep breaking records for MBTA ridership. And anyone who here can walk faster than the Green Line? So even just the fact that people ride the Green Line is a testament to the commitment to public transportation. So,
welcome back, everyone. We have with us our guest tonight, Richard Fries, and on the phone we have Peter from the Boston Cyclists Union. And you just saw that video that showed the cycle tracks on ComAv, and Peter's going to talk about those cycle tracks on ComAv.
Excellent, yeah. It's Pete Stidman here. I'm the executive director of the Boston Cyclists Union. And so, as people might have read in our newsletter online, we have successfully gotten the city to implement a cycle track on ComAv. It's not, the design is not complete. There's a lot of things that they're still working out, including some of the intersection designs and a lot of details. But right now, they are working on a plan that includes a cycle track, and that's super exciting. And I should say, it's not just the biking that made this happen. Some of the big collaborators were Livable Streets Alliance and BU Bikes over at Boston University, and definitely a lot of support from MassBike and Walk Boston. Notably was a big supporter of this.
So let me ask you, Pete, is there timing for this to be completed?
Well, right now they're racing to make what's called the MTO TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, and that is a funding mechanism that they decide which project sort of wins the prize of funding in September 2015. So if they get chosen in the TIP, then it would move to contract, and then depending, there's always, hold-ups for these sort of things, but it could end up starting construction in 2016.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, there's also, I read a few articles online this week about cycle tracks going on or happening in other parts of the city, like Arbor Way, Forest Hill, Morton Street. Are you familiar with any of those?
Absolutely. We're working on several cycle track projects. We have one that is super exciting. I encourage everybody to take a look at bostoncyclistunion.org. We got some stuff up there. I'll at the DCI's website. It is amazing. It's from Forest Hills to Jamaica Pond, and it's a little piece. Like right now, some people might know, the Mass DOT is working on taking down a large highway infrastructure kind of bridge over there and putting in some bike paths on either side of the street and making it into a boulevard. But from the end of that project, that's starting construction now pretty much, they're all the way to JP Pond. They're now looking at a plan that includes cycle tracks and calming the big traffic rotaries that we have all over Massachusetts into roundabouts, which are kind of a tighter type of traffic circle, but you don't enter it at an angle where you can be going 40 miles per hour. You enter it perpendicular, so you have to wait for the traffic inside the circle to go by and you find a spot. So it's a much calmer way to organize the traffic, and that is not only great for bikes, but great for pedestrians and actually cars too, because there's already a lot of motor vehicle crashes on that stretch. So we were asking for a retrofit of some paint and flex posts and trying to figure out a way around the rotaries to avoid them, but this plan actually went way beyond what we thought the DCI was going to provide. But we're also working on stuff in Brookline Village, on Summer Street in Boston, also Morrissey and Old Colony. We're talking to the city about putting that on their work plan.
Are these also, in the ones you just named, are they also cycle tracks?
Yep, and it's all part of a big campaign we have called Bikeways for Everybody. Essentially, we're trying to develop routes, crosstown routes, that reach from end to end of the city in different ways. We want to get to 5 routes, and we've talked to folks in Charlestown, in Dorchester, and in South Boston, and the first one is from Maritime Square all the way to Assembly Row, and that includes Summer Street as a little spur off of it. So we're trying to look at the big picture and think about ways we can get more people riding by just building, really safe, comfortable places to bike that actually get them to the places they want to go, like to their job or to school or whatever it is from their house.
Right. So Richard's here with us. I'm just going to ask him to weigh in on the cycle tracks.
Huge proponent of it. I worked for about 6 years for People for Bikes, which is named Boston one of their, one of their Green Lane project cities, which is great because they're actually, Pete, I believe you've gotten a grant from People for Bikes. Is that correct, Pete?
Yep, it was us in Livable Streets. We're the designated advocacy groups on that.
And People for Bikes basically takes money from the bike industry and other sources and then farms it out in grants. So they're really behind Boston in a big way. And, the one thing about, a lot of the things that, especially what Pete's doing, Livable Streets Alliance, they're providing this amazing technical oversight that we're even at the table. If you go back to when I started cycling, you weren't even at the table, let alone getting anything to eat at the table. Mm-hmm. And what's going on is that there's been this quiet little revolution in planning departments and in state planning departments where, they've been infiltrated by these little pro-bike people that came out of these great colleges, came out of these planning programs, people that look at European design, and it's been slowly taking root, and we're seeing it happen in Boston, but also throughout New England. But the one thing is that, and this is where I always tout this, that NPR did this one survey of what do people want at their place of work. And they polled 4,000 people, and they thought it was going to be, I want compensation, vacation, I want benefits. No. 1, I want to feel safe. 2, I want to feel like I belong. 3, I want to feel like I matter. And they find that when you check those boxes off, people flourish. So job one for the engineering element of it is to make people feel safe and comfortable. That's job one. People think they're safe in cars and they're not, but yet they've been made to believe that. So, but job two, and this is where I really want to focus, is that you belong, that you are a deserving person to be on the roadway. And three, that you matter. When a cop pulls you over, like, it's not going to be the immediate, well, what the hell were you doing on a bike here? And that's why I'm so excited with what MassBike's doing right now, because to have Pete in the Boston Cyclist Union really down on the ground doing intersection by intersection by intersection frees me up to do more stuff up here on messaging, on communication statewide, and what Livable Streets is doing as well. And then you combine Nicole Friedman being in there, you look at the buy-in we're getting from politicians and what we're seeing from departments of transportation and public health. We're moving the needle so fast. This is, right now, I feel this is akin to the civil rights movement in the 60s. Things are happening all the way, and Pete, would you agree, all the way at the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Fox, coming out last week, Anthony Fox. Look what we have with Stephanie Pollack in the Secretary of Transportation here. This is a magical alignment of planets going on. I don't know how you feel about that, Pete.
Yeah, definitely. And I would add that, it's not just the younger engineers and planners that are coming up, but also some of the old schoolers that are really adopting this and seeing the value in it. And some of them have been harboring these feelings for decades, but now because of advocacy that's going on the ground, they're able to have the leverage with the powers that be in their agencies to do really fascinating projects. One of those is like the DCR we've been working with on the Arborway, for one, the cycle track there. But that is just the tip of the iceberg with the DCR. We're starting a study of all the parkways in the area, which includes places like Alewife Parkway, over that way, but all over the region to identify places where we can do a similar kind of thing and, build in safer infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians.
So let me ask you both, because we're talking about all this wonderful future stuff to make cyclists safe. So here's a hypothetical situation. The year is 2024, and Boston has won the Summer Olympics.
Yeah.
And I'll start with you, Richard. How is cycling? What should we do beforehand to make sure that cycling and people getting from venue to venue to venue on bikes is safe and sound?
Well, a lot of it is this engineering that we're talking about, that Pete's working on, that we're working on at MassBike, Department of Transportation. But a lot of it has to be this welcoming messaging that we talked about in Copenhagen. And the one thing, I start a lot of talks like this where I say, what's the one thing you can get, the most important thing you can get to make your bike ride safer? The audience is always yelling, helmets, lights, body armor, mace, horns, whistles, whatever. I'm like, no, it's another cyclist. And what is happening, and Pete may want to comment on this, is that you're starting to see these certain hotspots. Inman Square, 9 a.m. at Inman Square, there's more bikes than cars. And this is even in the winter right now. We're seeing, and nothing makes you feel so safe as being in the mix with a lot of cycles. When you ride in Copenhagen, you don't wear a helmet. I mean, it's like, because it's just a river of bikes. It's girls, high school girls talking to each other. I got passed by a guy rolling a joint as he rode by me in the Netherlands. And I'm like, the guy's got both hands off, just right. But it's like a matter, that's how you go to the movies, that's how you go out, so it's when you're in the flow. And so I think we're going to see that happen. And, but a lot of it has to do with messaging, is that, when you go to Boston, it's a biking, walking town. We got to be able to start saying that, because look at, we don't want to let go yet of we are an angry, pissed off driving town. And why do we have to be like that? And I think that's changing. I don't know what Pete
All right, Pete, I'll ask you the Olympic question.
Yeah, no, Olympics, I think, if it happens, it could be, and we take no position on whether there should be an Olympics or not, but if it does happen, it is a great opportunity for bike stuff. The bike race for everybody planned that I was talking about actually connects most of the proposed venues that would occur, and I think it's a massive opportunity for Hubway to really reach huge. I assume by 2024 it'll be everywhere, but to handle the Olympics, they're going to need to amp that up even more. So I think it can be seen as sort of, for planners anyways, we got about almost 10 years or 9 years to prepare, that it can be, let's plan the system to be usable for all kinds of people, everybody, and connect the entire city. It's feasible. A lot of these bikeways that we're coming up with are created from a variety of different projects that are on the books, and there just needs to be a few more projects to connect them all. And we got to get all that funded and through. But it's actually very feasible to build bikeways that are comfortable for everybody throughout the entire urban part of Boston.
I just want to comment that it's not just hippies like me, or Pete for that matter. You're seeing this institutionalized in Boston in a wonderful way. My son, when he went to the orientation at Suffolk, I'll never forget the couple from Ohio. Their child was coming in. They raised their hand at the orientation. Where does my daughter park? The whole place broke down laughing. Like, no, you don't bring a car. So look at what we are. We are the biggest college town in the world. That's our number one economic impact of this entire region is education. And we have it institutionalized at Suffolk, at Harvard, at MIT. Don't bring a car. And that's at the institutional level of ordinary, respectable people, not just hippies like Pete and I. Okay? And that's really wonderful. Bringing it to the Olympic level, it's going to be like, whoa, don't bring a car. We always talk about it's Davis, California, or Boulder, or Portland. Well, wait a minute, time out. If you look at walkability, which loans itself to bikeability, and transit, Boston, when you combined walking and cycling together, we are the number one city already for biking and walking. Our mode share is already bigger than anybody else when you combine the two. So we have a real front line. We are already on the cutting edge. And if we host this Olympic, that's what we should be telling the world. There's only 3 cities that more than 50% of the population get to work every day by transit, and that is Boston, D.C., and New York. So we're already out in front.
So we should be telling them, don't bring a car. Don't bring a car. All right. So let me ask you both about the Walk Bike Summit that's coming up.
Well, there's two that first off, there's the New England Bike Walk Summit, which is in September 24th in Worcester. It's been in a biannual event in Providence. Now it's moving to Worcester. And that's going to be on September 24th. But then we are putting together the Bike Walk Summit for just Massachusetts. And Pete, my board we're a little mixed. April doesn't look like a good time. We're still planning it. But we're actually thinking of going away from Boston and going out to the districts to really showcase bike walk stuff.
To get more people involved? Or to get
sort of show what's going on in the communities so we can put those legislators out with their constituents, show them, if you were to draw a map of when MassBike was formed in 1977 as the Boston Area Bike Coalition, I actually commissioned a guy to do this map today. Great guy, Bill Guazzo. We're going to do a map of what was on the ground in 1977. And then we're going to say, let's do a slider where we just show you all the bike infrastructure that is now in place, from rail trails to bike lanes to bike paths. It's going to look like, whoa, look what we've done. And I got into cycling in 1978. Look, if you would have told me in 1978 that, hey, we'd get into the Tour de France, let alone win the damn thing, I never would have believed you. That we would have turned rail beds into bike paths, I would say you're crazy. But now I'm like, well, if the last 30 years was like that, whoa, what can we do in the next 30 years?
So what do you guys hope to see accomplished in this bike summit that you're planning for later this year?
Pete,
I'll start with Pete.
Yeah.
Well, the bike summit is a really interesting opportunity, and actually, I love that we're actually talking about this for the first time on air, but it does happen every year, and we go. But I would love to get our legislators on bikes, and we went on a mayor's. We organized a mayor's bike ride in the fall, actually in the winter almost. And now we're talking to the city about possibly the day after Bike to Work Day. But I would love to get MassBike's involvement in something where we actually get legislators on two wheels, because there's no really better way to have them experience for a day what it's like for us every day.
Let's you and I do that, Pete. Let's do that.
Definitely.
Let's do a good old-fashioned Irish pub crawl with legislators, huh?
That sounds like a good one. We will definitely look for that, and then maybe we'll have the legislators come in for a show. Well, we can interview them after the bike ride.
You know, and
absolutely.
You know, it's that would be a great show, by the way. And you know, we had two bills that we introduced. You know, in looking to hunt down sponsors, it took a real leap of faith 20 years ago to get a legislator to put his or her name on bike legislation. We just had over 37 sponsor our bills. That's huge, Pete. To get, you know, it's no longer like hippy dippy stuff. People are viewing pro bike stuff as good stuff for these politicians to get behind.
Yeah, and what's really driving that is the fact that more and more people are actually engaging with their local legislators on bike issues and letting them know that they ride a bike and that they care and they vote.
And you know, one of the great things has been Best Buddies, PAMAS Challenge, MS, diabetes. All these charity rides have gotten more and more of these quote-unquote normal people. You know, working with John Hancock. You know, in the financial services, there's so many butt kissers in that business that if the CEO does something, well, everybody does that. So when the CEO is riding, guess what? All those freshly scrubbed MBAs are riding. It's hysterical. What's going on right now is that people have real political clout are becoming passionate cyclists.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Before we just have a few minutes left, and I do want to talk about the 3-mile radius around every train station.
Oh, yeah.
So can you explain to our viewers exactly what that is?
Well, you know, I just about fell off my chair when I'm in the meeting with the Department of Transportation. They go, you know, the Federal Transit Administration, they're going to start funding that if you are within a 3-mile radius of a train station, they're going to fund the bike ped stuff there. Now, if you're in Colorado, that doesn't mean a whole lot. If you're in the Northeast, whoa, this may be a game changer for the Northeast corridor.
For our audience, what's bike ped stuff?
This means, how do you build a curb? How do you build a bike lane? How do you build? We start to see we will do more protected bike lanes, which is what we're talking about with the protected bike lanes that we're talking about on Palm Ave. This stuff is going to get started. We're going to start seeing some federal funding come into this stuff. I think it's going to be a little dodgy to begin with, but in the Boston area, if you build 3-mile radiuses around train stations, well, you're talking the whole city. I mean, you're talking. This could be a real game changer. A lot left to be done on how, you know, it sounds like a good idea. Getting the money to come through all the channels, as people tell you, is not always that easy. But I think when you listen to Secretary Fox, I think you're starting to see, you know, Tim Blumenthal at People for Bikes once told me, you know, for the price of building one interstate cloverleaf, just one, you could fund every bike project on the drawing board. You could totally fund it right now. And I think as we get tighter and tighter on tax revenues, I think people are starting to see the ROI on bike stuff is really worth it. I don't know what